afternoon. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of the Foul Playland. As always, I am Sir Foul Player of Brooklyn and wanted to make this quick show while I'm doing chores around my house regarding the recent political events and the fallout of this assassination of Charlie Kirk that happened last week. I'll lead it with the usual formalities as far as wishing his family a smooth run from here on out. And I don't pray, so, but I would say my prayers go out to that family. But it's not my thing. Michael Johnson, peace. But in regards to the um, left, and it's something that I always cover on this channel a lot, and it's not because of hate of another race or of distaste. I mean, a love of conservatives. I actually hate the Republican Party. But growing up in Brooklyn, New York City, I mean, I dropped out in the ninth grade, but up until that point, I had for all intents and purposes, a liberal education. And it's not like I was a dumb person as to why I dropped out, but I was always aware of what was happening and how I was being taught. And mind you, I mean, this is way before the true liberal takeover, which started happening really in the 2020s, as far as them showing their teeth and them operating in a fashion of trying to silence opposition and submit or die kind of ideology. Most liberals or most people on the far left, if you don't submit to what they agree to is the facts, they're likely to hit you, or they're likely to, you know, um, curse at you or alienate you or just not want to deal with you. And that's in the best of cases. But then you get extreme cases like the assassination by this left wing lunatic of Charlie Kirk, and this is kind of like standard operating procedure in political discourse um, in America. But the violent reactions, or the people that will try to silence you from speaking, or who are more prone to violence just because of what you're speaking, is a trend that's been escalating with the liberal left in this country and the liberal far left in this country. And I mean, a part of that too is, I mean, since 2020, you've had a large penting up, like where people like just didn't go out as often, um, don't associate with each other in the flesh as often. That's a post 2020 problem. But I think that political discourse, because of that, has also caused some sort of amplification, like the fact that people don't go outdoors as much anymore in the 2020s has only amplified the political discourse. But you literally have a lot of these people, like when you see, I don't watch these, like I again, and I'll make this clear. Didn't really watch Charlie Kirk that often. I knew of Charlie Kirk since I was living in Jersey City. I mean, so that's probably like 2016. Um, but a lot of people, if I start talking any sort of points that are anti-liberal or anti-left, people automatically assume that it's because you're like got converted, like, or indoctrinated by one of these online like a Charlie Kirk or a Steven Crowder, or Ben Shapiro. I don't watch many of those people besides like clips here and there if they pop up, or if there's sort of any interest. And like the Charlie Kirks really didn't interest me that much, because I mean, if you've watched it for an hour or two, I mean, like, you pretty much get the gist of it. Like, liberals that believe men can't be women, you know, um, are there to be like sort of laughed at, or and some people, older people. sometimes don't know how bad it is with the liberal left. So I mean, I guess it's good for them to watch, but for me personally, it's not nothing I watch like regularly. And as talented as he is, as far as being a debater and having his, or as talented as Charlie Kirk was, and in terms of debating and having his moral compass, something that he could defend easily, as far as like his religious beliefs, like it didn't sound phony baloney when he would defend his points as far as being a Christian, and certainly not coming off as a phony baloney when he would talk about the lunatic liberal left. Um, but again, it's nothing I would watch like regularly. But living in New York City and growing up in New York City, seeing how bad things have become, especially when it came to liberal politics, seeing the escalation of violence. I mean, like again, like that's violence I seen it introduced firsthand when with a lot of these political discussions, and this is probably predating 2016. I mean, this is when I was still living in Brooklyn. But I've seen the liberal left at work firsthand. A lot of them, and it's on full display for everybody in the world to see. I mean, like with the turnout of the Charlie Kirk assassination, you had a lot of people that were celebrating the fact. Um, and these are the people that are supposedly their moral compass is guided by empathy for supposed minorities. I mean, but they'll attack minorities like myself. I'm Puerto Rican through and through. But once one of minorities step out of the liberal plantation, or God forbid, in some circles, you could say that you are a fan of Trump, and especially in New York City, you could be attacked for that. And you could get a mob attacking you pre 2020. I mean, during the 2020s for wearing like a MAGA hat in New York City. And this was, I mean, like this was not like a year ago, and it could still pop off like that today. But again, this is not an attitude that you see with the with conservatives in general. And part of my awakening, in a sense, I mean, like my awakening is more to the fact that I started getting more interested in domestic politics. Once I left New York City, like I was just so busy with life, I couldn't really tune into a lot of domestic politics. And most of what I would see was just Trump, 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 Trump. And I didn't really like Trump in 2016. I just thought that there had to be some truth, but I wasn't really tuned in like that. But after maybe like in 2018, like a lot of my conversion to listening to what Trump is saying was in large part due to the fact that every bit of news had to do with Trump, and I just got sick of it. And once I started tuning into domestic politics a lot more, I mean, like, which is probably like 2018, 2019 time. Shout out to my man who kind of put me onto game. Um, Deacon Dirty out of Connecticut, my brother, who I've done some content with, and he kind of like put me up to like as far as what was happening with domestic politics, which I kind of like purposely wasn't tuning in, and it kind of like brought me to where like kind of being a fan of Trump or wanting Trump to win the presidency. And then right after that, we had COVID, which again, liberals will punch you in the face for COVID, for dissenting against the jab. Like liberals will punch you in the face like for dissenting against mass migration. These are all and um going back to my conversion, or not my conversion, but my kind of like walking away from liberal politics started happening during that lockdown period. I mean, I really started traveling the country a lot more then. And in my mind, I mean, living in New York City, I just thought that, there was some racist white guy, I mean, making me and my people fall at every step of the way, and we just couldn't get out of it. And I thought that I would receive, like shitty treatment from white people in the South or white people in these rural parts of the country. And that never really happened. I mean, like, most of those people kind of like went out of their way to not have that sort of reputation. And but what I did see more and more is that the young liberal left, gullible white people in the liberal left, who else? Radicalized women, men that kind of like behave like women, and like screeching, um, just real vindictive. That started peaking more and more and more in the left, and I just can't really adopt to anything that they say nowadays, whether that be politically or with the crazy ideology that they push. It just really, none of that stuff resonated with me, and I guess here I am. But as far as YouTube goes, I mean, like whenever I try to say anything that didn't align with the liberal left, I mean, like the reception I would receive by and large, I mean, like by my fellow so-called minorities would be one of like, well, how the liberal left reacts, where they try to silence you or kind of like dress it up as if you're like some sort of sellout, or you know you're doing it because of some deep-rooted racism that you don't realize you're doing on your own. It just is a bunch of BS. But I think with this Charlie Kirk assassination happening, sorry, I'm not reading the comments. This was happening in the right now. JM Vid said hi. Dwarka 999 said also said hi. Thank you guys for coming. Dwarka, hello. But with the Charlie Kirk moment that happened on September 10th, if you guys don't know, he was assassinated by a liberal lunatic. Um, I wasn't in America during 9/11. I was actually in Europe when that went down. But when Charlie Kirk got assassinated, the following day sort of felt like the following day or the day after 9/11, like where you kind of like had the inclination that, this is a big deal or something changed, from this point on. And I think you're kind of getting that right now in this country. Dwarka wrote, "Where are you from?" I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I live in New Jersey now, though, and praise the Lord. But the Charlie Kirk assassination has kind of woken up the world as to what's happening with, and it's not just the liberal left. I think the liberal left is almost like an apparatus that these really dark entities that are on this world you are now utilizing as a cudgel to beat the rest of the world to submit. And in the past, a lot of people would look at the liberal left with the wrong perception that they were doing everything because they were the types of people that were guided by their love of everything. I mean, like, we're guided, like, I mean, like, when you look at like their pride festivities that happen every June, I mean, everything is about love. Love is love, and when you observe the liberal left or hear them talk for any amount of time, I mean, there's nothing about that exudes love or compassion or empathy. And it's not like that's the only thing that guides me, but by, or that guides the conservatives by any stretch. But it's sort of a kind of a distinction that the left is given for no reason. Like, the when you it's almost always been considered that the left is acting out because they're anti-racism. Yet there were a lot of people on the liberal left that were very critical of non-minorities that voted for Trump, or minorities that voted for Trump in 2024, and a lot of them will be outright racist, with that. And they had, like, and I have friends that are, most of my friends are on the liberal left, and it wasn't until maybe like a year or two ago, like, where they would even, like, have any sort of discourse with me. I like, I'm just now starting to get some come around, as far as, like, being able to talk these things with people that I love. It's not like, these are like strangers to me or people that I know from the internet. But the liberal left has always been given that distinction for no reason, as if they're doing things for the sole purpose of the fact that America is racist and they're trying to cure that. No, they're not. I mean, the liberal left could give two shits about black people, Spanish people, pre George Floyd. I mean, like, go on to, I mean, most of what they were pumping during the worst of times. I mean, during the Rodney King, I mean, were they on that type of time? Even in California for, for years after that? Like, I mean, like, or within, like, I mean, I think they just adopted the racial element, or acting like they were advocating for some sort of racial element in recent history. I mean, like, pretty much around the time that Trump became president in 2016 is kind of like when the liberal left kind of like leaned into propping up, like, the fact that they were the representatives of all things minority. But with the liberal left, it's hard to have any sort of discourse with them, because you have a lot of either A, outright violence, B, bastardization of topics. I mean, like, C, the fact that they will try to, confuse you with certain issues, or just try to pigeonhole you. I mean, there's no real debate. I mean, it's all, a lot of what I've gotten. I mean, like, when I talk to people that I love, honestly, with these topics, it's basically trying to catch you in some sort of aha moment, and it's just, it almost seems like a fruitless effort at times. And even still, I mean, like, when I make YouTube content in the past, I would do it with the sense of trying to kind of like just have some sort of discourse with people that feel that they're represented by the left, and even that's like really tough. But this unfortunate assassination has kind of like shown the world that it's real hard to kind of like talk to people that are deeply rooted into left-wing liberalism. It's real hard, and we have a real big problem. I'm not sure if this is also in Europe. Well, no, I definitely know it's the Europe has a big time liberalism problem, and I seen it firsthand when I went to Paris in 2004, which that was the first. France was probably the first country in Europe that allowed mass migration. And when I went to Paris, it was nothing but Arabic dudes and African dudes drinking beer everywhere you went, pissing in the street, harassing women. There were no bitches out when I went to Paris, not even one. Like, you couldn't walk out there. It was just straight up men with paper bags and beers, just languishing and chilling around. And I soon found out that Paris just became that way. Like, France was the first country that kind of allowed that open borders policy, and now all of Europe is like that. You know, what was happening in recent history under the Biden administration, and what the liberal left intends for America, is another example of, or to try to Europeanize America, with the open borders, with the not giving conservative viewpoints a voice, trying to always paint the conservatives as some sort of fascists. That was happening in full bore in Europe. And we got 4 years of it under the Biden administration. And most people who are candid saw how bad that was for this country, during the Biden administration, those 4 years where you had mass migration, mandated vaccines, um, the disturbances as far as classifications of genders, you name it. And I honestly feel that things would have kind of like stayed the same regardless if Trump won or not. But this watershed moment with Charlie Kirk, I mean, has kind of like jolted people into seeing where we're at as a country and as a planet. We can't let the radical liberal left take root, because I mean, again, like, they're not doing these things because they want to prop up like gay people, or they want to live around migrants. They really, I feel that their driving force is just to kind of like cause chaos, kind of cause a need for things to be overly policed. And that's kind of like what was happening. I mean, hopefully the election of or the Trump winning the election kind of like stops a little bit of that tide. I mean, we're really early into his presidency, but I think people around the world are changing rapidly to the problem that's at hand. I mean, I always fear like that some political person that I do like could suffer the same fate as Charlie Kirk, and that it would kind of like stop the momentum that we're having now. But seeing that Charlie Kirk did get assassinated, it's kind of like riveted people up. I mean, like, I'm not a Christian, but now many people are flooding into like 2025 version of Christendom, which is one that's patriotic. And I don't have a problem with patriotism. I used to have a problem with patriotism. I thought it was like a veiled um, anti-brown, anti-black kind of utterings. Or I used to think ignorantly, but nah, I'm of this country more than anybody I see around me. So I could now say that I'm very patriotic. I consider America mine at a minimum. Let me read some of these comments. I disagree with all that. With all that, it's all the left's fault. I mean, yeah, agree to disagree. Bro just said he be a loving person, no racism. Both sides are crazy. Well, I disagree with your opinion, and I have mine. I wish you the best, and don't even know you remember food for thought. Well, I don't know if you guys were talking amongst yourselves, but going back to what I was saying, much of what I see as far as like the racial component, which again, like, a lot of people are overly driven by the racial component of everything. Like, you could have a debate about anything, and once if somebody tries to attribute you with being a racist, I mean, that's over. Like, that's it. Conversation done. This guy's more racist than that guy, so I'm gonna go with the least racist guy. Like, I mean, and it's sad because people, again, going back to my original, like my first point, like, people barely deal with each other in the physical realm as is. So I don't see why race is such a driver in every conversation. And unfortunately, liberal white men, or liberal white men who cosplay as females or dress up as females, are the driving force behind much of what the left is pumping out. And a lot of people who disagree with the left, listen, it's getting so bad. Like, I mean, I'm telling you from a personal perspective, it's getting so bad that a lot of people from the liberal left, I mean, I get these conversations all the time, and they'll just, their one defining point, or their one drop the mic point, is always, oh, well, these conservatives are always known to be racist. I'm almost looking past that at this point. I'd rather rock with racists than with somebody who is trying, like, with men who are trying to read to children while they're dressed as women. I much rather take a racist over a degenerate. And it's not saying that I'm accepting of racist. I'm not, which I'm not. I mean, I don't rock with racist one iota. But I would rather, if you told me, listen, you have to do any sort of task or any sort of interaction with somebody who's an outright racist. I think everybody's racist as is, so that'd be pretty much dealing with a regular human being in my eyes at this point, or with somebody who's a degenerate. I would never deal with degenerates. And what the liberal left has leaned into is almost like trying to make degeneracy like holy, and degenerates. I consider somebody who's not willing to let you get off and like talk or assassinate you, like, or cheer on an assassination. I consider that kind of person a degenerate. You know, not every assassination. I mean, there are people that should be removed from this realm, 100%. But some in terms of Charlie Kirk, I mean, like, a lot of people are saying, oh well, his opinion of black people was terrible, or Martin Luther King. I would have to see a lot of these clips, but much of what I've seen from him, I mean, or pretty much all I've seen from him, I didn't get that 10 or 1 iota. You know, but again, with the liberal left, if you don't agree with them, like, it's pretty much die. It's pretty much, we don't want you to live. And a lot of people, make assumptions based on those points, that if it's not liberal left, then he's got to be racist. If he's not submitting, then he's definitely a bigot. If he's not submitting, he hates all gay people. Like, and we got to get off that. And it's kind of a weapon, the only weapon that the liberal left was left with. I remember my whole life, and I'm an old man, like, where I always felt like, nobody's speaking for for uh so-called minorities. JS2, I did see a comment regarding a 10-year-old Charlie Kirk saying that a 10-year-old being raped would have to carry her pregnancy. I mean, that's his belief as far as his Christianity. I mean, you go to, like, I don't see many people like going at Muslims or at you know people who are the Judaic religions, going after their crazy beliefs. But I mean, like, I was talking to my wife about this. It seems as if, it's almost like expected, where you're allowed to go after Christians. And again, I'm not a Christian, but everybody I grew up with was a Christian. My mom's a Christian. Um, but in this country and in Europe, it seems like, you could make fun of somebody for being religious so long as they're Christian. Yeah, I mean, I don't see many people going at Muslims for what their beliefs are. I mean, like, the people with the Judaic religions, they just started getting a lot of bad press of late. But even with them, I don't see many people that make it a point of bastardizing their religion. Yet I see a lot of people who are of that country in the Middle East are like the main drivers of going at other people who are mostly Christians, like, which is just a observation, that there's many people within the Jewish community that are gun ho about doing away with Christendom, especially in America. Who is going after Christians in the U.S.? Um, I would say that. Well, I'll tell you from my going into Maine stories. If you go up to Maine now, which I go to Maine regularly, like the state of Maine, like most half the churches out there are like covered with rainbow stuff, rainbow flags. And I mean, I guess to each their own. But picture, if you will, like a couple of one mosque, that happening to one mosque in America, the Muslims would ride out on that immediately. And I mean, I wouldn't even blame them. You don't see that with Jewish temples doing the same thing. It's always some sort of undermining of Christendom that happens in America, and it's almost baked into the cake. Like, I mean, and I've always had a lot of distaste for Christians, and I think it's more along the fact that I grew up Pentecostal and I didn't want to be in church at any point. I've always hated church. It's boring. I still do. But I would join in the fray. You're talking to somebody who always, thought that people, Christians, were kind of like archaic thinking, if you will, like old school. But there's no other religion that people go after in mass like they do Christians, and it's kind of like almost like expected nowadays. But and I don't know if this is like a correlation because of that, but since the Charlie Kirk thing, I mean, I've seen a lot of people like kind of being becoming Christian, like in the wake of it. It's just I don't know if that's just on the internet, if that's in the churches, or but you are seeing a little bit of an uptick in people kind of like reverting back to Christendom. And I predict that that's going to happen far more. And like I think that, again, like we just started, this is kind of an inflection point in this country and in the world throughout, of what we're at risk of losing if we allow these people who are utilizing the liberal left to try to conquer us all and sequester us all, censor us all, mandate us all. If we don't stem the tide now, I mean, like, imagine Trump didn't win, and like some sort of some where censorship would still be at full bore. I mean, and this is like we're still dealing with a lot of censorship, even on YouTube right now. Um, if some other Asian flu came into America, like how fast like would everybody be forced to mandate? You know, um, and we were a stone's throw away from that being a reality in America and in the world throughout. How America flows is how the world flows. But these are really, really crazy times that we're living in. I'm glad that I'm alive. I think that this is the craziest time in the history of man. I mean, or we're right at the precipice of heading in probably the craziest 100 years in the time. And as scary as it is, and as broke as everybody feels right now, and kind of like disenfranchised, not in love, like which is like a lot of what I see people feeling nowadays. I'm still very grateful and happy to be alive at this time. As much as I know things are gonna suck for my son, myself, my son's immediate next generation, but I really am glad that I'm alive at this time because how crazy things will be. I think I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm a very level-headed person, and I think when I actually do get to talk to my friends, it kind of get to more them, or talk to them with a sane voice. And sometimes maybe they don't get to hear that often, or if you keep hearing everybody repeating the same shit, like how we do nowadays, everybody got a "it is what it is" attitude. Like, it'll drive anybody nuts. Everybody, we hear the same stuff at a constant, even though we have more technology than we've ever had. And, the fact that everything's so censored and sequestered and tribalized, I feel like we're getting like less information than we did, when I first started going on the internet in the 2010s. But hopefully we swing in the other direction and people are down to talk more openly. Um, I don't see that happening in the immediate sense, but hopefully my son's generations could enjoy that stuff. And they may be able to enjoy that stuff by people making a very set of hard sacrifices nowadays. We can't like say, we got to stop letting others talk because of their viewpoints. We got to kill people because of their viewpoints. That's stuff has to go with the last millennium. Let me read some of these comments. Who is going after Christians in the US? I disagree. What do you disagree with, my brother? But I am very thankful for what's happening politically in this country. I don't agree with much, all of it. I don't agree with America financing foreign wars, especially that big one in the Middle East. But we are entering into a age where a lot of things are being shown to the people, or a lot of people are starting to see some hard truths. Now, whether you choose to ignore them or, that's on you. Whether you choose to ignore it because you're tribalized or because you don't want to listen to the other side. I mean, that's a choice that you have to live with. But again, I mean, like, and I listen to most of the stuff that I listen to on TV and not so much on YouTube, but like the TV that I watch, as far as news and as far as like the political shows, almost all of them are liberals. I don't listen to any sort of conservative news, like Fox News. That's never shown in my house like that. Like, I mean, the only time I'll listen to Fox is when I'm watching Meet the Press and what's the other show? It's Meet the Press. This week with George Stephanopoulos. When those shows have they all show at the same time, but when they have commercials, both those channels, channel ABC and NBC, at the same time, then I'll like watch a little bit of Fox, like just so I don't watch commercials. But besides that, I really don't listen to conservative pundits, if you will, that are out in the public openly. The conservative people I listen to are probably censored, i.e., Donald Trump was censored. I listen to a lot of what Donald Trump says, not like as far as instructions go, like, but I made a point of not listening to what stuff about Donald Trump from 2016 to like maybe 2018. So I usually make a point of, if Donald Trump makes a true social post or if Donald Trump has a speech, I'll try to listen to it, because political discourse and politics, especially as it relates to Trump nowadays, it's like NFL football. I mean, like, or playoffs football. It's high speed. Rambunctious. And Donald Trump had his ability to speak thwarted when he was censored on Twitter and a lot of these social media platforms. So it's good to hear somebody who was down and out like Donald Trump, somebody who he himself had an assassination attempt on him a few months ago as well. It's good to get the perspective of somebody who, in a sense, was silenced. And I hope that, again, the censoring apparatus is caved in entirely. I really hope that happens in America. Again, we got to start having really hard conversations about what's happening in the Middle East currently, but I could be thankful for what we do have right now. I mean, like, even with the Epstein stuff, like, a lot of people are now talking about Epstein. I mean, they weren't talking about Epstein when Joe Biden was the president. Nothing in the Epstein files were released when Joe Biden was the president. And in spite of the fact that a lot of people are associating Trump with Epstein, I still am appreciative of the fact that people are talking about Epstein under any circumstance, because I mean, it was just a topic that people weren't really touching, and now thankfully the liberal left is all over it because they feel that Trump is associated with Epstein. I guess take the good with the bad. I'm with it. But all in all, I think that even before the Charlie Kirk assassination, but that we're entering into a period of just massive truth being spilled out into the open. And in many ways, that's going to make people bug out, which is already happening. But in many ways, I mean, like, it's going to be necessary for humans or society to kind of like survive into eternity. Like right now, nobody's having kids with each other. Like, men hate women and women hate men by and large. I mean, I don't run into many young men that look at their life goals as one of, getting married and buying a house for themselves, and that was something that regularly, I mean, young people were chasing after, somebody they loved, or goals as far as buying a house, and that's kind of like disappeared, especially here recently in these last couple years. And will that be something that's feasible in the short term? I don't know, but I know that that dream was slipping away more and more these last 4 years here in America, like under the Biden administration. Like, now, will Trump regain that back? I'm not sure. I can't make predictions like that, but um, I think that going back to the Charlie Kirk assassination, that the left being looked at as the lunatics that they are, you could talk to these people and you look in their eyes and there's nothing there. And I go to school currently. I went to school last year. I just started going to school again. But you look at some of these people, some of these professors that are highly liberalized, and they're like my age. It's not like I'm going into college, some young kid, but they're nuts. I mean, out and out, without debate. I mean, I was talking to my wife recently how when I was a young person, growing up in the 90s, I would deal with hundreds of people per day in the streets of New York City. And maybe once a week, you'd run into somebody who had that far and away nutty look. But nowadays, I mean, I mean, you go to a college campus and most of the people have that pale, no look, no emotion in their eyes, kind of like just far away blank stare look about them. And I mean, I don't know if that's something that was kind of like went on overdrive, like due to COVID. But a lot of that though is because much of our youth also has adopted these same liberal principles. Like, a lot of our youth are misinformed in the perception that they have of the left, and the perception that our youth have of the left is that it's all just one big tent and everybody loves each other. The tent has a rainbow on it, and that rainbow represents everybody being down and everybody's with us. Yeah, But I'll tell you outright, I mean, I've been dealing with the liberal left, even politically, as an ally of the liberal left, mind you. And once you're not aligned with everything that they're suggesting, you become their enemy really quick, really, really quick. And a lot of that same liberal left has no love for minorities. I mean, like, I ask people that, especially so-called minorities, like, who among the liberal left, as far as their politicians, do you think has a lot of clout or a lot of power? And they really have a tough time telling you. I mean, they'll tell you AOC or some shit like that, or Jasmine Crockett. Some people that are, politicians that are more performative than important. But you know you also say, what do you think about the liberals and what do you think about conservatives? And they'll, before you even finish talking, they'll be like, oh, they're racist, like, about conservatives. And again, I mean, like, I see that a lot of so-called minorities, if they think that you're even a mustard seed worth of racism within you, they're not gonna mess with you. And I mean, like, to each their own. But the liberal left has they're extremely racist, many of them, but they have a perception that everything they do is to combat racism, and that nothing that is within them can be racist. So they kind of like get a lot of currency for no reason, especially with so-called minorities. And it's something we got to change. I mean, I when I was young too, I remember like conversations about abortion with women, minority women at that, and a lot of them were really, really anti, abortion. And whereas nowadays, I mean, a lot of women altogether, but minority women too, will like kind of like parrot the same talking points as if abortions are some sort of holy sacrament, and it's the most important medical topic, you know um that should be debated. I mean, it wasn't like such a big deal like when I was a young person, like and most young women would carry their babies to term. I mean, like, that's besides the point. But nowadays, I mean, like, I wouldn't, when discussing these things, with all sorts of women. But fast forward, 15 years later, if you will. Now you have, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find a minority woman who would be like, oh, well, like, that's a life, and I'm not gonna abort that baby. That's like kind of like, whereas when I was a young person, I mean, I knew tons of chicks that got knocked up, and they basically had to come to the realization back then that I gotta have this baby. I'm not gonna eliminate this baby. I messed up, you know, and I'm not, again, like, if you, I'm not like gonna take a side on that debate as much. I just see it more as like, why are these liberals so gun ho about this debate? And it's like a lot of these liberal white women that are nuts about the abortion debate. I don't even think they're having sex like that. Like, if you look at them, they don't look like they have these like, they don't look like the type of women that are having these rambunctious sex lives with men, at least. I mean, whether they screw each other like by the act of scissoring, that's one thing. But a lot of these liberal women that are like so gun ho about abortion, it doesn't seem as if they're boning anything that's not made out of plastic. And they don't look like the type of women that anybody would want to bone anyway. So I mean, like, why are they so gun ho about this debate? And in my quiet recesses of my mind, I think that they're more gun ho about that debate because they know that most of my people, the so-called minorities, are the biggest consumers at these abortion clinics. If you go, like, I mean, I have one in my neighborhood in 43rd Street and 3rd Avenue in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. I don't see like no liberal white women entering into that place ever. It's all Latin women, you know. But they're basically advocating for minority women who are the biggest, you know, uh, patient groups in these abortion clinics to have, unmitigated abortions full bore, like, and you could die if you disagree with that contention in the eyes of the leftist lunatics. But nevertheless, I mean, like, I don't like leaving these YouTube conversations like where people feel like they're disenfranchised. Never feel disenfranchised. I think, in spite of the unfortunate events with Charlie Kirk, that people are slapped in the face with a little bit of a wake up call. I'm hoping, you know, I'm hoping we could get to a point where if somebody tries to, you know, stop somebody else from talking, that they should be lambasted and mocked and like shut down. You know, everybody should have a say, or everybody should be able to express themselves and have conversations. And Charlie Kirk, I mean, I've heard it said before, but it's true that he was willing to have conversations with people that didn't agree with them. And I wish I could do the same. Even here on YouTube, but it's a pain in the ass. It's standard practice where like if I enter a YouTube panel, and I enter a YouTube panel and I'm very candid about Trump and about my distaste for liberalism, where people will just repeat themselves over and over, like, and not let you talk, or like stop you from talking. That's, and is that like something like an anomaly? No, it's standard for me or anybody who, people that align with left-wing lunatic politics, or for somebody who they feel is conservative, like for to be shut down, by people that either align themselves with left-wing lunatic politics or who vote along the lines of the left-wing lunatics. And again, I got it, like, I'm a so-called minority myself, but I'm here to criticize my own people in that, we've given the left-wing lunatics all the political credit in the world. I mean, and we constantly bitch about how bad our neighborhoods are. Like my neighborhood, Sunset Park, has gone from shitty to the shittiest. And we were the first to have a socialist assemblywoman, of all New York City that we voted in. And I think we're about to vote in a socialist mayor in New York City. Um, but talk to anybody in New York City, if they're like willing to talk, and they'll just tell you how their existence is so miserable. But they'll also tell you, about racist Donald Trump. And on the same token, like, you never voted for Donald Trump. You never voted for anybody who aligns with Donald Trump. You never voted for anybody who aligns with anything conservative. Yet you bitch about everything politics, and then blame whatever conservative apparatus that's there as a target during that time. If the Republicans have the Senate, they'll blame the Republican senators. If the Republicans have the House, they'll blame the Republican Congress. If a Republicans in the executive or in the president, then that'll be the aim for their ire. But New Yorkers, I mean, like, who have been living with a ever increasing shitty existence since at least the year 2000. I'll put it 2003 forward. Things of like where you, as a New Yorker, you couldn't buy a house any longer. As a New Yorker, where stop and frisk started being implemented, where um, you know, it just became more and more gentrified, more and more packed in. But they never blame the liberals. I mean, they'll blame them in passing, but they'll vote them no regardless. Like, they'll vote them even if they think they're the worst liberal in the world. They'll just tell you, "Oh, well, I can't vote with those racist Republicans," or some stupid shit like to that effect. And I said this prior to the 2024 election, when Donald Trump won office again, or when he won the re-election, that in New York City, I started seeing a lot of men, black men and Latin men, but a large wave of black men, honestly, that were very disenfranchised with the liberals. And a lot of it had to do with the open borders that brought in a large migrant population into America during the Biden presidency. And in New York City, they were being thrown into what were already overpacked ghettos that were occupied by Black and Latin people. Well, like a lot of, I started seeing brothers that were really pissed off about that. And, these are not people that you could say that if they were telling you, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, that you could, like some squirrely, weak liberal will tell them, oh, well, you're a racist. Because, these are the type of people that'll crack you in your shit. Like these are not like chumps, they're tough people. But you started seeing a wave of that happening in New York City prior to the 2024 election. And again, I say this story um, because I attended a funeral prior to the election. I think the week or two before the election, and everybody who was a man at that funeral, like when we started talking politics, was voting for Trump. Only one person was not. But and that was probably directly related to the migrant issue. But with the Charlie Kirk assassination, I think the America as a whole and the world as a whole now know that we have another problem, and that's that the left wing lunatic liberals have taken over pretty much every facet of entertainment. That's why your music sucks. You can't name one artist that you like nowadays. All artists, all music sucks. Almost all TV sucks nowadays. And that's because the liberal lunatics have to have their input into everything, into every sort of entertainment, art form. The only thing that liberal lunatics don't try to ramp down is minorities killing each other. Minorities killing each other is totally acceptable for left wing lunatics. They make it seem like that's part of our culture. You know, if you don't understand that, then you're not cultured, according to left wing liberal lunatics. Now, they would never live around violent minorities, but they would think that you know minority areas being policed is like some sort of equivalence to slave catching or some shit, like bugged out. But we're at a different time now in 2025, and this assassination, as unfortunate as it was, has now shown the world that lunatics in the liberal left, or these people that are using the liberal left to batter the Western world throughout, which is Europe. Europe has already fallen apart. Europe almost has no hope. There's too many migrants in Europe. Um, Everywhere in Europe looks like New York City does right now, you know, inundated with migrants. But thankfully, with this unfortunate event happening, I see that the world throughout is going to start feeling emboldened to start giving some pushback to the left wing liberal lunatics without feeling like they're bigots, without feeling like they're racist, without feeling as if they're some sort of holier than thou, like, Christianized critic. You know, it sucks that it took that, but I'm thankful that we could now discuss these things. And now people realize that the standard for left wing lunatics is join us or you're our enemy. You know, Charlie Kirk was more than open to having a discourse with people that didn't agree with him again. And for that sin, a left wing liberal lunatic ended the life of a father of two babies and a husband, you know? And, I see a lot of people reasoning with like the dumbest things, like, oh, well, he didn't like empathy, so why should I feel empathy? Like, it's the same stuff that you would get like with when the liberals covered Trump, when they would talk about Trump and make up certain things based on like a half quote that he said, or take a small part of a quote and then make it seem like Trump was this bigot or this racist. You're starting to get some of that with people that are trying to paint Kirk in a negative picture in the aftermath of his death. But thankfully, I mean, I think people are going to start looking at these people for what they are. I mean, like, whether you look at them as mean or violent, or whether you look at them as if they're left-wing lunatics who their religion, I mean, is basically hate. Their religion is basically no religion. Like I don't want, like, it's not all atheists, but you do see a lot of atheists within the liberal lunacy, and they operate as if their beliefs are a religion of their own. I mean, like, they operate as if you don't believe in what they believe, then you got to go. And a lot of people didn't see it as that. A lot of people thought in America that when your kids go off to college and they come back with nose piercings and shaving their hair off for of their daughters, that this was just happening in a vacuum, and that it was worth the investment because maybe their daughter is going to get a job with that college degree. But a lot of people are starting to notice that, our daughters and sons are lost to us because of this left wing ideology that has pervaded every institution, most of our political thinking, and with the Charlie Kirk assassination, we now know that liberal lunatics are willing to kill you should you not agree with them. But with that, I'm gonna go back to my chores. I got laundry to fold. Look at that. Let me see. Bam! Look at all that laundry. But with that, I'm gonna take off. I'm gonna start coming onto this platform far more. Like, I think the only reason I came on was to talk about this Charlie Kirk. I've been too disenfranchised, like, to make YouTube content of late. My heart ain't in it, and it's not because of this stuff either. Life is life. But I do gotta come on here more often. And so if you guys are going through it, If I'm going through it, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are going through it too. So I mean, it's better that we talk than not talk. But with that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. With as always, I am Sir Foul Player of Brooklyn. I'm out. Peace.